they have some of these that are doing the reconnaissance have programmed sub-personalities that are proficient assassins.
I have so many questions for you. I'd like to go back, though, to what you just mentioned. The infiltration in the 50s. Many people, and I do believe this, this stems from Nazi Germany, from like Operation Paperclip, where the Nazi scientists were brought here and every other place to be studied. And they, again, fulfilled whatever allegiance they had to Hitler, and they continued on planning this agenda and spreading and probably contacting other Satanists or whatever, thereby leading to this infiltration that we're feeling. Do you think it stems from Nazi Germany?
Oh, 100%, because Nazi Germany, because the Germans, and again, Germans are like any other nation, but Nazism flowed from occult-oriented teaching. Much of the teaching of the Nazi agenda came from, when you track it back, you go back to Helen Blavatsky, you go back to Alice Bailey, and any of those readings of the Secret Doctrine, or specifically in Alice Bailey, the old occult writer, who wrote a book called The Externalization of the Hierarchy, referring to the ascended masters, of course, how they look at them as their masters, and these powerful ancient, spirit beings that are communicating an agenda. And when anybody reads that book, they will see the agenda is. The agenda is regime change. The agenda is completely spiritual, counterfeit-oriented. It involves the ascended masters bringing governmental ideology, technology, all kinds of science that would be breaking through. And again, you go back clear, to the 40s when some of the occult-oriented material was written. I usually mention this a lot in some of the, and it'll be heavily mentioned in the book too. There's a historian who wrote a book called The Occult Establishment, and this occult historian said there's two times in history that occult literature was massively unleashed in nations. The first time was pre-Nazi Germany. All kinds of massive occult-oriented books, literature, materials, which then when people got into, then they begin to get into the actual spiritual experiences, creating the Thule Society and all the secret societies, and eventually you get the demonic revelation turns eventually into political ideology. And that's what Nazism was all about, because in it had the agenda of annihilation of the Jews, which, again, that is the satanic Luciferian goal, because Jesus will visibly return there one day. In Revelation 19, he will descend, and the very temple, the very spot, the very place is where ultimately the Antichrist will be gathered with the troops of you can call them stormtroopers, whatever you want to call them. The ultimate troops of Antichrist will be there. And again, it's spelled out clearly in Revelation 19:19 when it talks about the beast, referring to the Antichrist and his armies. Well, if you take a look, Gina, at Revelation 19 and drop back to Revelation 16, in 16 there's this incredible demonic ritual release of powers, and it talks about these spirits go to the kings of the earth to gather them together for the great day of God Almighty. Well, Revelation 19:19 is the fulfillment of that. So, how, if that's a few years off, even 5, 7, 8, 10 years away, that means that along the way, Satan has to somehow communicate to the heads of scientists, military scientists, mil lab scientists, weapon scientists, military strategists, governmental individuals. I believe that this agenda has utterly been poured into the United Nations, all to fuel new weapons, new technologies, voice-to-skull technology, every kind of weapon that is going to be needed when the Antichrist comes to power, and to not only control the world and to gather power, but Gina, the ultimate goal is the annihilation of Israel. For what reason? I really believe this, and this is what I think a lot of theologians and others have to chew on. I believe that Satan really knows biblical prophecy well. He knew when Jesus was coming the first time, and he tried to be there to destroy him. Revelation 12 clearly mentions that he was already there, he's already waiting. He also knows the second coming. And if he can annihilate the recipients of prophecy, I think it's in that agenda. They think, even their foot soldiers think that if they can annihilate the recipients of prophecy, maybe they can stop Jesus from returning. And anybody who reads Revelation 19:19 and sees the beast with the most powerful military in human history, with more nations gathered than any time in history, around Jerusalem, near that temple, all what it says in Revelation 19:19 is this: they gathered there to make war on the rider of the white horse, which Revelation 19, it shows Jesus is descending visibly as promised. And the whole ultimate end game of this is to have that battle-ready group to see if they can stop it. And many of them will admit to this. And here's the problem. They believe it. They really do believe it, because behind them comes satanic powers programming, and they're not permitted to get anything else. Unless we can crack in, that's why we as Christians have to learn targeted spiritual warfare. We need to really even go backwards a little bit in not only uncovering Operation Paperclip and Sidney Gottlieb and Esther Brooks and West and Orrin and all those guys, because that material is 45 years old. What we need to do now is see where it has come to now and who's a part of it. And I do believe that we can have effect to expose, to break into it, to scream it out, and get people warned and prepared. And I believe that's why God gave us prophecy, to prepare us for. I think prophecy, in my view anyway, it clearly strategically shows what I have learned from the underground and what their plans are. They are really, God has really exposed them strategically on how they're going to do it and what their end goal is, and ultimately, in cases like yours and others, there's an agenda to either suck people in and make them a part of it. Like you said, if you've heard that kind of communication coming into your head, that's exactly what Alice Bailey talked about, the occult writer who got her information from these demonic ascended masters, that basically saying, hey, if the Christians don't want to join in, here's what she called it, there needs to be a cleansing, because we're holding it back. And the cleansing in her mind means extermination.
Yes, that's definitely what organized stalkers do. They want to get rid of their victims, and I believe there's this reason behind it. I'm a devout Christian. I always have been, and annihilating me off the earth, makes way for the Antichrist, because I have read that the Christian church really needs to be removed totally before he can come into power. So, organized stalking victims, I know, like I told you before, a lot are Jewish, some are Christian. I'm now starting to get some Muslims. The one world religion will not tolerate any other faith outside of following the Antichrist. So this removal of the church, and they do refer to it as the apostasy, needs to take place. And they are infiltrating everywhere, because I know that organized stalking victims, when they call law enforcement, they're often the ones who are arrested. The reports are tampered with. They don't get help from law enforcement. Anything can happen. They can still get home invasion, have their property destroyed, and nothing will happen. The weapons that you mentioned, the voice to skull, many victims suffer from that. I know, like I told you, and you mentioned, I suffer from this every night. And it's all to deceive you. They wait for me to go to sleep. And I have heard a hypnotist working with them, so that's interesting that you should mention that. And right away, you don't want to follow Christ anymore. He doesn't love you. He wouldn't make you go through this. Leave Christ. You can have everything in this world. And I thank God that I picked up on it, because how many people have not picked up on it and have gone out and committed suicide, or who've gone along with the program? I really thank God that I picked up on it. I can actually now talk back to them, and they don't like that. They are all about control and mind control through these weapons, which are used to deceive the population. It's deceptive. The devil is deceptive. He is here to deceive. And those of us that he cannot deceive, he's going to find a tricky way to come in and try to deceive us. And I'm not falling for it.